When I was approached to speak, I felt a little overwhelmed and wondered what could be meritorious about my story. Then it dawned on me my family has an incredible story. And this is where my story begins. This is my mom, Alana, in Peace River, Alberta, at around the age of 14 when she would have met my dad. The lion's share of what I know about connection comes from this incredible lady. My story also begins here with my dad, Doug, pictured here at about the age of 16 in Peace River at approximately the time he would have met my mom. At this age, he was deeply ashamed of his indigeneity, and he was trying to make it as a young white man in Alberta, despite the betrayal of his phenotypic expression. The rest of what I know about connection comes from my dad. This is the genesis of who I am and how I would eventually define myself as a man and an Indigenous person. My parents had a connection which transcended the division of settler society and the Indigenous population. My mom taught my dad to celebrate who he was. However, the consequences of their miscegenation were not lost on my parents. Here, in a rare event, is both sides of my family. My dad's parents taught him one thing: his indigeneity should be hidden and it should not be celebrated. Over the years, my father grew up feeling increasingly disconnected from his family due to the forces of intergenerational trauma, and he developed a quandary of identity, which is all too common among Indigenous people. And here I am, the wild man, long before I ever considered who or what I was. Growing up throughout the prairies, I was frequently mistaken for a person of mixed Asian and European ancestry. Sadly, the strong anti Indigenous prejudice in the prairies made this a mixed blessing. That said, from an early age, my parents taught me and my siblings to celebrate who we are and fostered a sense of pride in our indigeneity. My parents also inculcated a deep connection to family, and as such, my immediate family became incredibly close, so close that we're often described as a wolf pack. What guided this connection? Kindness. My mom repeatedly told us that above all else, it was crucial that we should be kind. At the end of the day, we all knew that they would be proud of us, even if all we ever achieved was being kind. My parents also thought it was important for us to get an education. So here's my mom during her university days with a double gulp in her hands, the elixir of her scholarly achievements. She had four children at home, attended university full time, and worked at least two part time jobs, and we never went without her attention. She showed us that we could achieve anything that mattered in life. This is my mom's silver medallion, which she earned for graduating with the highest GPA in the University of Calgary's history department. The focus of her studies was on Indigenous peoples, and she went on to pursue a Master's of History shortly after being awarded this outstanding achievement. She told us one thing: if she could do it, she knew that we could do the same. The caveat, of course, was that we would need to remain deeply connected to each other, as the support of family is everything. In 2010, my family grew when I married my wife, Loshi, who would go on to support me throughout my education. This relationship was master planned by my mom, who went to great lengths to connect me with my wife, someone I'd known when I was a child. My mom could always sense remarkable kindness in people. When I returned to school, I knew I was going to achieve more than a bachelor's degree, and I knew I was going to contribute to the well being of my people. Unfortunately, shortly after I commenced my degree, my mom was diagnosed with amyloidosis, a terminal disease. She pulled through, and she soon joined my sister and me for many of our courses, such as the anthropology of homelessness, in which we carried out a donation drive as a family for the local soup kitchen. The pursuit of education also led to a deep desire for me to reconnect to my Indigenous culture. And no matter which academic discipline I was engaged in, my locus was very much on the amelioration of Indigenous peoples. I was also deeply focused on what it meant to be an Indigenous person. When I had my daughter, Jacoba, I immediately knew one thing: I did not want her to suffer from the Indigenous quandary of identity that had already plagued multiple generations of my family. In my mind, any inhibitions this family had with respect to owning its indigeneity ended here. As such, upon convocation, I applied to the Peter A. Allard School of Law because my family and I decided that we could realize our goals of destroying the colonial project through the practice of law. I had my eyes set on Allard law because of its specialization in Aboriginal law and because of the Indigenous Community Legal Clinic, where I knew that I could begin to give back to my community in a very real way. Throughout my mom's illness, we lived together, and I was a primary caregiver. And as her disease tormented us, we found that our connection continued to fortify. The depth of our connection, we learned, is infinite. With her in full remission, my parents pushed for me to move from the island to Vancouver so I could attend law school. We had dreams to achieve as a family. So I headed to Vancouver with my wife and daughter, and I got to work. Moving away from my family, even though there was only a short ferry ride between us, was so difficult. And although it was difficult, it was rewarding, and it wasn't long before I started to make real connections to the Indigenous community at Allard and beyond, and I soon realized that I was actually achieving my goals. My first day at Allard was the orientation for the Indigenous Legal Studies program, and it blew me away because it was the first time that I'd met a coterie of people just like me. Indigenous people, often suffering from the disconnection to their culture, who are focused on not only trying to claw it back, but to also ensure that the generations after us will be in a better position. During my second year, my mom's disease came back, and she told me that the most important thing I could do was to remain focused on my studies and to get my law degree no matter what. Sadly, a month before I was scheduled to begin my last year, she passed away. I stayed the course because I had to, because my mom had shown me that no matter what we faced, we could make our dreams come true as long as we did it together. And as long as I stayed connected to my family, anything is possible. I soon learned that the importance of connections transcends the family relationship when I started at the ICLC, where both Indigenous people and allies are connected in the goal of realizing the amelioration of Indigenous people. And when the pandemic hit, I saw that we also had an unwavering connection to our clients as our work continued. It's shown me that what my mom said is true. If we remain connected, anything is possible. As I continue in my work at the ICLC, I take pride in what I'm doing for my people, and I continually think about how my grandparents' experiences at residential school and day school threatened to extinguish the connection to their family and their culture. And I look at my parents and my daughter, and I can see that the colonial project has ultimately failed. I see from my work and my life that this connection will never be severed because I know that at the end of the day, this connection is ultimately driven by one thing: kindness. My mom's final wish was that if anyone could take one important piece of advice from her, it would be this: be kind. Through kindness, I have remained deeply connected to my mom, my family, and my people. Be kind.